Hello, my name is James Rosone. I write with my wife, Miranda Watson, and we write these awesome books and series that you guys have been reading. Y'all posed some great questions, so let's go ahead and try to answer some of your questions. Um, let's get to the first one here. So we have a question from Mark Canty. He wants to know, when you're writing current stuff, is there a clash between what a vehicle slash weapon can do and what the plot would work better if it did differently? And how do you draw the line between close enough? That is a really good question, and that's actually kind of a tough thing a lot of authors struggle with. For us, I try to make them as realistic as possible. And one of the ways that we've done that is over the years, we've built up a pretty solid beta reader team that I have broke down by branches of service and then the different types of jobs some of the people have done. So for instance, when I have a tank scene, I have a couple guys who are tankers in the first Gulf War and in Iraq, and I'll send those scenes to those guys, and they'll help us make sure that we get the language right, we get the terminology right, the functions of the vehicles correct. And we try to do that as much as possible with all of the different scenes. I've got some Marines on our team, and I send a lot of the Marine scenes over to them. They help make sure that things are set up right there as well. So it's really a bit of a collaborative function to make it all come together and work. But we do try to make it as realistic as possible. Sure, it would be great to have um, that vehicle never run out of ammo or never need to get filled up with gas or break down, but that's just not realistic. And so we try to keep things as close to how they really function, how they really work. Next question, we got one from JJ Thomas. He wants to know if we've ever thought about doing an alien invasion style story set in modern times. That's not a bad idea. I think some of my post-apocalypse friends have done some similar types of works. Maybe doing like a modern take of like H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds could be kind of cool to do. Maybe that could be a series down the road. Certainly, definitely will keep that one alive because I think that could be a fun one to write about, definitely. Alan Richard Scott. He wants to know if we've ever looked at something along the lines of designated survivor and the fallout and fight afterwards. That's another good idea. I think it falls a little bit more in the post-apocalypse realm than the military thrillers per se that we tend to write. Not opposed to it, but to be honest with you, we've just got so many different series ideas percolating around that we want to get to. Part of the challenge is just having the time to get to them all. I mean, I typically will write, anywhere from 2 to 10 hours a day, mostly 7 days a week. And I can knock out maybe a 600-page book about every 10 weeks. But the problem is the editing. Getting it, Miranda, her piece, and then getting to the professional editor, getting to the beta reader team, that's usually about 6 months to go through that entire process. So, I constantly am writing the books. I just keep stacking them up, and Miranda's got this backlog right now where she's 3 books behind me. I'm working on book 3 of the new sci-fi series, and she's not done with book 5 of the current series. So, it's a bit of a backlog, but it's a good idea. I guess I could probably throw that on there, but to be frank, that probably wouldn't happen for a good 3 years because of the other series that are stacked up in front of it right now. But good question. Let's see, the next one we have here is from Thomas Smith. Why split the series up in so many installments? He hates the weight. I concur, I hate the weight too. Part of the reason you break them up in installments is because of the physical size of the books, believe it or not. So when you publish a book and it reaches a certain number of word count, the problem is you either have to shrink the print word down to like 8-point font, which is terribly hard to read, and then close, widen all the margins and all this stuff, just so you can have the book fit in one format. And then it's like 600, 700 pages. It's almost in-read. You almost can't even read. It's just too small print. So you kind of have to split it up, or Amazon will split it up for you. They'll tell you got to do it in volumes. And the problem is if you do it in volumes and you make it into 3 or 4 volumes, each one of these volumes is going to be $20. So then you're looking at someone who wants to read a paperback book. It's going to be like $60 or $80 to read book one. It's not really necessarily fair or nice to do to them. So our books tend to be really longer than most military thrillers, to be honest. Most of ours in the print category are between 550 and 600 pages as it is. So it's a pretty meaty book. I know it goes by really quick on a Kindle. That's just the nature of the game with Kindles. But there's a little bit of a method to the madness with doing that. Plus, I'm not going to lie, there's a bit of a monetary thing as well. You want to have your books be a little bit, you don't want them all in one, but at the same point, you want it to be somewhat longer, because the way the Kindle Unlimited breaks down, if you write short books, you honestly get paid a heck of a lot less than if you write them around the 100,000 word count to 120,000 word count. That gets you at least a better royalty stake from Amazon doing that. So there's a little bit of an incentive there, but at the same point, if you go too long, then it becomes only available in Kindle, and you completely cut off all the folks who want to read it in print. And I really don't want to do that, because print books account for probably about 20% of our sales, and we have a lot of folks who really like the print books. So we don't want to, end that. Let's see here. So Eric Schreck asked another question. It says he loves the series. He wants to know, in the new space series, is it an extension of World War III or entirely different? Good question. So this is entirely different. However, because of the way we've laid out the series, there is a lot of opportunities for us to go back into doing that. So for instance, the new series starts out in 2090. So near term, but not too close. And we make a lot of references to a massive third world war between the US and China that takes place in the 2040s. And that essentially is the impetus for why we have why we have the Republic, why we have the Asian Alliance, why we have the Greater European Union, things like that. That all happened because of this massive world war that devastated the planet. So I think when we get probably 4 or 5 books into the new series, I may go back and do like a 3-book prelude series, so to speak, that'll cover that time period. And you'll see a lot of the same characters from the 2090s will be showcased in the 2040s, because people are obviously living longer through medical advancements. So you'll see the younger versions of themselves in that conflict. I think that'll be kind of a neat way to world build and really kind of create multiple spawn-offs of this particular series. So let's see here. PJ Everett was asking a question with the Fallen Empire series with Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell's really good at interrogations and in doing that, and wanted to know what I did for research material and how I got that. That's an easy question. Most people either don't know this, or maybe they haven't read one of my other books, Interview with a Terrorist. When I was in the military, my actual job was an interrogator. I would spend usually 12 plus hours a day sitting down interrogating Al-Qaeda prisoners, trying to find out where the next attack is going to happen, what's the next thing in the works, who are the leaders, who are the cell leaders, how do we hunt them down. So I spent a good amount of my time in the military doing what's called human intelligence and source operations. And then after the military, I worked in U.S. European Command on the Joint Intel Staff, J2, running the Identity Intelligence Program. So with that, we were again doing a lot of biometrics and forensics-enabled intelligence, a lot of tracking and locating foreign extremists and terrorist networks across most of Europe. So I'm really, really familiar with the type of stuff that Seth Mitchell's doing, because that was a big chunk of what I did in my 20s and early 30s. So a lot of that comes from experience. You also asked a question about the draft and training of new armies, and ever give any thought to American public not supporting a draft or going into the military, and how it would impact the outcome. That's a good question. I think in the series we've written, you probably would have a small percentage of people not wanting to be in the military or participating there, but at the same point, I think with all that's happened to the country, there would be enough people who would be rallying around the flag that I don't think it would be too much of an issue. When the U.S. is outright attacked, politics tends to go out the door. It's like, okay, you're messing with my little brother or my friend here, then you're going to mess with me as well. And I think a lot of people do end up coming together during that kind of stuff. Um, how long they stay together, how long they hold up, that's a bit of a debatable question right there. But I think with the country was being invaded and really being torn apart like that, I think a lot of people would kind of rally around the flag. At least I sure would hope they would, to defend the country and just come together in that particular piece. I mean, I think we're seeing some of that right now with this COVID-19 stuff. Obviously the media has its own bent to things, but I like to think most people are starting to come together over this, hopefully, but we'll see. Another question, William Ferguson asked, have we ever thought about doing compendiums for our books, like locations of battle, order of battle for countries, and timelines of events, maps and locations? I've thought about that. I actually wanted to integrate maps into the books themselves and make it a little more easier for people to see things and do that. One of the really big challenges, copywriting issues. Amazon's very sticky about copyright issues when it comes to maps. The other challenge is the file size. So when us authors upload a book to Amazon, we make a certain percentage profit off of the sale. But this is a recent thing in the last couple of years. Amazon now charges us a certain amount of money depending upon the file size that has to be delivered to the reader. So if I put in a bunch of maps and cool stuff that I want to put in, the challenge is the file size now goes up goes up substantially. And when that happens, it ends up cutting away the profit that the royalty I end up getting paid for the ebook. As it is, I don't make a whole lot of money on ebooks, like, $3.50, $4 a book. But if I do that, I shrink that substantially more. So unfortunately, Amazon's placed in some restrictions that make it not really viable to do good maps. I mean, I don't really want to do a bunch of draw stick stuff like that. It's just, hand-drawn maps just don't really look all that great. I have thought about integrating maps onto our website, our author page, and doing something along those lines where we make interactive maps with the different battles and things. To be honest, it's just a lot of time. And part of it just comes down to, do I spend a bunch of hours dealing with that, or do I just keep cranking out the next book? And to be honest with you, I'd rather just keep working on cranking out the next book or talking and answering folks' questions than spending half a day or a couple of days doing a bunch of maps. As cool as they are, I think we put enough detail of the different locations. You really could Google Earth them, because I'll be frank, I use Google Earth to write a lot of the scenes. If I'm writing about a city, I go in, I look at the city, I'll figure out what part of the city I want to talk about, I'll look at the street names. I put a lot of that stuff in the books. So if you were to look at the books and you followed it with Google Maps, you could really follow exactly where I'm writing. So a lot of that stuff is kind of there already. Mark Pruitt asked a question on research. How do you go about doing that? That's challenging. Wikipedia is definitely your friend. So is Google. So is asking your network. So there are 4,000 of you guys that follow our pages. I have a lot of people to ask questions of. We've got a good beta team I can ask questions of as well. So that's really what it comes down to, is not being afraid to ask questions, even if they sound stupid. I'd rather ask a stupid question about something I just don't know to get that piece right in the book than to believe I know it and get it wrong, and now I've got 5,000 people that read the wrong information. Am I going to miss things? Heck yeah, I'm going to miss things. It just is the nature of the beast. You do your best. You hope that your editing team, you hope that your beta readers can help catch some of those points as well. But ultimately, you're still going to miss some things. It just happens. Even with professional books that are produced by the the big trad pubs, they miss stuff too. It happens. But we try to get it right as often as we can. Martin Rosales asked a question about should we show more military families dealing with the war? It's a good question. I don't think I've probably shown that enough. I think we tried to show that a little bit more in the Falling Empire series, with our guy who was up in the Northwest doing building the IEDs with him and his wife. probably need to work on that some more. I know one of my areas I need to work on as an author is getting better on my character development and spending more time on the characters. I think sometimes they get lost in this big, grandiose plan or story we want to tell. And because of that, there's a lot of different points of view you have to tell in those stories. So you end up with a lot of different characters. And because you have a lot of different characters, you can't develop them all as much as you want, because in the book series would be 6, 7, 8 books just to get through certain scenes and through certain areas. So I try to do the best I can with following a handful of characters and developing them out, and then just having a bunch of supporting characters needed to move the plot, move the story along. But that's something we're definitely trying to get better at. I think each series we get better at that. I think the sci-fi one is going to be better. We're spending a little bit more time on that type of stuff specifically. Martin also asked a question about why we didn't do something with the Texas Rangers down there in the Fallen Empire series. I think the reason we didn't do something with the Texas Rangers is largely because the scene just developed really quick. Would they be involved and would there be a lot of civilian militias? Yes, there'd probably be a ton of that kind of stuff going on. But at the same point, when you have the PLA army, invading across the border like that, it's very difficult to stand up to an armored column, armored forces like that. It's not to say it's not going to happen. It's not to say we're not going to go develop IEDs and develop all kinds of stuff like that too. But you have to remember the difference between how the U.S. military reacted to civilian uprisings and IEDs attacks in Iraq and Afghanistan compared to how the Chinese would react to that in America are vastly different. The Chinese would probably have no problems just shooting everyone in sight or rounding up hostages and executing people for the different types of sabotage going on. The U.S., we just didn't do that. And it wasn't, we just morally wouldn't do that kind of a thing. So I think that just honestly didn't have a lot of time to put all those places in there, a lot of pieces in there. We really wanted to focus on other parts of the story. What I can tell you is in Retribution, you're going to see a lot of action in Texas. A lot of retribution is going to be taking place for the atrocities and what's been going on there with the private military contractors and the Chinese army as they're retreating. So I hope that answers all you guys' questions. I look forward to plenty more. We'll try to make this a bit of a more regular routine. Thanks.